stick you on your side where you can see me. So I like to get them fairly drunk first.
Yes.
Because you want their, you want their head down. You don't want if you're pumping fluid in. You don't want.
And she's a little, well, she's passive.
Yeah, but when you're pumping fluid in too, a lot of times as you pump, it like dilates the esophagus, and they get painful and they throw their head up in the air, and so you don't want them to aspirate in the process of. When we're done, I'll take a listen to her and kind of decide, what else we need to do, like antibiotics and stuff like that. Since we don't really know how long she's been choked. You said it was looked like it had grass in it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yesterday presented was definitely green.
Yeah.
And Karen was here for that as well.
Yeah.
But then she seemed like she had resolved.
Right.
Yeah. She was literally projectile shooting out mucusy green stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, like grass and saliva.
Yeah, and she would
So unusual
cough and do her teeth.
Yeah. Usually they'll do more of a retching, like trying to throw
like
up.
Like
that.
She was more like just like a cough this morning.
Well, and I guess we'll see. And so she wasn't trying to eat or drink anything.
No.
Yeah.
So Kit, what is it that you're doing right now as far as?
Well, first of all, let's take a moment and introduce Dr. Daniels, Dr. Cindy Daniels with Daniels and Daniels Equine Services here. We have one of our older Pasos. This is Traviesa, and she had presented with a possible choke, which is an obstruction, typically food bound in the throat, or better explanation from our vet.
In the esophagus. Yeah, and I think that's one of the confusing things. A lot of people, when they think choke, a lot of people get really worried about it, like it's a dire emergency that second, because they think choke, and they think choke like a person who's choking on something, meaning it's in their airway.
And they can't breathe.
Right, and they can't breathe. Not that it's not an emergency, but it's not like they're going to die in a second. But it's so it's an esophageal obstruction. So they're trying to swallow something gets stuck going down, and then typically what you see is stuff coming out their nose, like usually feed material mixed with saliva, which apparently she did have, like grass and saliva coming out. Now it just looks like saliva. So it's a little unusual in that she seemed as though she had resolved it on her own, but then still has an issue. So first thing we're going to do is try and pass the stomach tube and see how far we can get with it. And I always sedate them and put a twitch on them to do this, because there's a lot of manipulation of the tube. They're commonly end up with a nosebleed just from all the manipulation. And she's older, so that makes it more likely to get a nosebleed with a tube anyway. So.
And I think she's as small as her, she's probably going to have a little bit more narrow.
True. This tube is pretty soft.
And she's been pretty heavily sedated.
Yeah, if she's not sedated enough, we'll give her a little more, because you really want you want their head to drop pretty low. Go ahead and. As little as your head is, your nasal passage is not. That's awesome. Yeah, it's good.
I remember we had to tube one of the 15 passes that we got in at another point in time, and they were extremely narrow.
Yeah, I treated a little Paso mare for colic the other day, and her nose was very narrow, and she did get a little bit of nose ring.
Can you describe what you're just doing there?
So what I'm doing is she didn't really swallow like normally they would swallow the tube, and then I make sure that it's in the right place. So there's a couple different ways to do that. the esophagus is like a collapsible tube. So if I suck on the tube and it's in the trachea or the airway, I'll get air back. When it's in the esophagus, I won't. So I sucked on the tube. Under my tube got it's triangular at the moment.
You have some odd-shaped lips.
Anyway, so I sucked on the tube. I have negative pressure, meaning I can't get air back. So that's one indicator that I'm in the esophagus. And then I'm actually feeling on the left, the esophagus sits slightly to the left, and I'm feeling over there, I can actually feel the tube in the esophagus. And the other way sometimes is we'll go like this on the trachea, and if the tube is in the trachea, you can feel it bounce around in there, meaning you're in the wrong place. And typically if you get in the trachea, they cough also. And then I tend to blow on the tube because then it distends, because the esophagus does collapse, it kind of distends it, and especially in older horses, their esophagus can be a little bit flaccid. And I'm trying to see if we're like to the point of our choke, or if you know, it's just binding up, which I think we might be there.
I don't know if you can hear the gurgling sound.
I don't know. It's weird. Yeah, it must be coming back out. The air's coming back out our other nostril. I'm trying to just put some gentle pressure. Sometimes if there's something lodged there, it'll move. Going further than where we are, and I feel the tube kind of going in there. It's past that, so the places it likes to hang up, one is what we call the thoracic inlet, which is at right here, the beginning of the chest, which the tube's past there. You can't feel the end of the tube. And then the next place is at the cardia, which is at the bottom of the esophagus, right where it enters the stomach. So, Kit, if you can just hold it, can you hold the tube there too? Can you be an octopus?
Okay.
Yeah, just put a little bit of inward pressure on it.
Okay.
And if she gets upset, we're going to stop. I'm just going to pump, and if she gets upset, we're going to stop.
Okay.
So far, it's going, which makes me think that it's close to the stomach because it's going. Normally, if it were truly like fully obstructed,
I feel a little kickback a little bit in the curve itself.
yeah, which that's common. See, now there's something coming out her nose. But she's not really getting worried about it. You know?
Mm-mm.
That's for this tube. I got a tube. See if she'll drop her head a little.
Is that too low?
No. No, look, there's. Alright, so let me just swap that. Alright, hold that tube again, if you will. Alright, let's see. Oh, stomach.
Yeah, there we go.
Stomach. Okay, well, that's a good sign. I mean, that's just grass and we're good. All right. Well, there's a real positive indicator that we got to her stomach, so. All right, I'm gonna pull it you. Short little esophagus and a little mare. I mean, only, yeah. You know, you look at how much tube was still out of the horse. All right, you can take the twitch off of her. And then I'm going to grab my stethoscope
See if we have any.
Yeah, we'll take a listen to her, and I probably will, at minimum, give her a dose of Exceed. Oh, I'm sorry. Dose of Exceed and some Vanamine. Did you have
Okay.
you guys given her anything? Okay.
So what do you think, what is she saying so far?
So, so the airway itself is clear, or from the esophagus is clear, because she was into the actual stomach itself, and that's what she got back was from the stomach and not from an actual blockage. So whatever was obstructing her has gone through. So she was having also residual discharge, whether it was the grass and or feed or a combination thereof. There's still going to be a buildup of that in her system that her body's still going to be getting rid of. And because when you do have a choke, there's a possibility of them having some aspiration of fluids in there. And so Dr. Daniels is going to come and give a listen to her lungs and see if we have
Maiden voyage of my brand new set to
Oh, nice. Do you have your name on that one? I hear a little gurgling in her nose. I hear like a little gurgling in her nose.
Yeah. And I think that's being referred to.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. You didn't know I was here, huh? Yeah, the biggest serious complication is aspiration pneumonia, which can be nasty. Stomach contents. You were saying you're hearing.
Just a little gurgling in her.
Yeah, I think some of that is probably from the tube and the fluid, but and then some of it's from the sedation because it causes a little nasal edema.
Oh,
So like
okay.
when you sedate a horse and they sound like they're snoring, it's usually because the back of their throat gets really relaxed, but also they have a tendency to get a little edema in their nasal passages and makes them sound like they're snoring. How old is she, kid? In her 20s somewhere.
Mid-20s. And she's a prime example of, where many people say, and the reason my horse is skinny is because it's a senior, and that doesn't necessarily mean all seniors cannot maintain a good weight. It's very much individualized.
Yeah, she looks pretty good.
Yeah.
And I wonder what happened to her eye.
I know.
Some kind of injury.
Yeah, well, it's actually, if you look at both of her eyelids,
Yeah.
both of her eyelids look like they've had some type of damage to them. The top part,
So she's 99.2, which is normal. Up to 99 to 101 basically is normal. And yeah, this is kind of like what I would call an end stage eye. Meaning that there's actually like fluid circulation normally in the eye. You don't think of the eye as having circulation, but it does. There's fluid in it, and it's produced and reabsorbed. And then when that all stops working usually from injury, sometimes you get a big, giant white eye, but then a lot of times you get this kind of shrunken little end stage eye, and it just gets really small. They tend to get irritated though because then their eyelids just sort of hang there. Now she's got a little water coming out her nose. But the other thing, we'll see what happens with this. The other thing I was going to say about the older horse esophagus is that older horses are really prone to chokes because their esophagus is partially made up of skeletal muscle. Partially smooth muscle like what the gut's made of, and partially skeletal muscle. And so as they get older and they start losing skeletal muscle, then they lose muscle in their esophagus as well, and so the esophagus can get kind of flabby, and then things want to hang up there. Makes it harder to pass the tube on an older horse too. It also makes it so even say with a colic where we've tubed them with water and electrolytes and maybe some mineral oil, when they're still sedated, a lot of times they put their head down, and some of it comes back out their nose because they have sort of these, they don't hold stuff down there as well. So, but we want to make sure that it's not, obviously she's not still choked. That's a good girl. I think, you know, she doesn't sound bad. I think most of what I'm hearing in her trachea is referred from her nasal passages. But I think I'll give her a shot of Exceed and some Banamine.
Okay.
And then I don't know if you guys can put her on some oral antibiotics.
Yeah, we have SNCs, but we can,
Yeah.
would you prefer, you